It's taking so much time. It's not going to throw also growing old. Okay. Let's check with the Thakur on 636. He says, those who are absorbed in Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, and so on, they are the ones who see the lotus feet of the Lord, meaning they and no one else. They see the lotus feet of the Lord. It is not that they do not see the lotus feet of the Lord. And they see the lotus feet of the Lord very soon. They do not see the lotus feet of the Lord after delay. They see your lotus feet. They do not see some plenary, the lotus feet of some plenary portion of yours. They see your lotus feet. And that lotus feet, it stops the cycle of birth and death. It is not that it does not stop the cycle of birth and death. And then they see your lotus feet. They do not see your impersonal feature. Baladev Vidyabhushana Prabhu has pointed out that they see the lotus feet of the Lord, which indicates that it is not that they simply attain Vaikuntha. That means they attain service to the Lord. Baladev Vidyabhushana has remarked on text 20 that the countryside and so on, uh, which uh, which are blessed by Lord Krishna's glance. Without his glance, the prosperity, the lack of prosperity, will simply give us misery. There is Interesting remark. Tadapi Pandaveshu Yadaveshu Tad Bhakteshu Api Yat Snehasya Chedam Prarthaye Tat Tad Avatarat Purvata Eva Deha Sambandhena Yog Vaharamaya Snehaha Pravrittaha Tasya Eva Natu Tad Priyatmani Bhundanasya. Kunti Devi is praying to the Lord that the affection that she has for the Pandavas and the Yadavas, who are devotees of the Lord, and despite their being devotees of the Lord, she is praying that that affection be cut. That refers to her conventional affection, her just transactional affection. That was on the basis of the body, which was there even before the Lord's incarnation, before the Lord descended, that bodily relationship was established. So that she is saying you cut off that relation, that affection, not the affection on the basis of them being dear to Krishna. Okay. 1.8.46. To 1.9.5. 46. व्यासाद्यैरीश्वरेहाद्यै कृष्णेनाद्भुतकर्मणा प्रबोधितोऽपि नाबुध्यत शुचार्पितः. King Yudhishthira was much aggrieved, could not be convinced, despite instructions by Vyasa and other great sages, and by Lord Krishna himself, the performer of superhuman feats, and despite all historical evidence. What is this? Oh, wait. What is this text? What is अथ भीष्म निर्याणोत्सवं वक्तुम् उपोद्घात कथां प्रस्तौति. Now, Suta Goswami, in order to talk about the celebrated departure of Bhishma Dev, introduces the topic by talking about certain events that led to it. व्यासाद्यै प्रबोधितः अपि शुचाव्याप्तः सन् न अबुध्यत, विवेकं न प्राप. Despite being enlightened by Vyasa and others, Yudhishthira was overcome by lamentation. He did not attain discriminating knowledge. Kutaha, how's that? Ishvara ihaya agyaihi svabhakta bhishma niryana mahotsavaya ragya saha kurukshetram gantavyam tatra tanmukhena iva ayam prabodhaniya iti Ishvara abhiprayah कार्यद्वय विधायक विधायकः तम अजानद्भिः. Because he splits Ishvara, Iha, this expression, see, Ishvareha Gyaihi. He splits it as Ishvara Iha Agyaihi. By those who did not understand the will of the Almighty God. And what is that? The Supreme Lord willed as follows. Bhishma was his devotee. And he wanted to go to Kurukshetra for the celebrated departure of his devotee Bhishma along with the king. And there the Supreme Lord desired that he should be enlightened through the mouth of Bhishma. They did not understand that these two activities were planned by the Lord. Shri Krishnena api praboditaha na abudhyat. Even when he was enlightened by Lord Shri Krishna, Yudhishthira could not understand. Atra hetu. And the reason for that, adbhuta karmana. That is what? Adbhuta karmana. Yeah. By one who performs all superhuman work. यथा कुरुपांडव संधानार्थं गतः अपि यथा उचितमेव वदन् अपि विग्रहमेव दृढीकृतवान् एवं अत्रापि प्रबोधयन् अबोधमेव दृढीचकारेत्यर्थः. Just as the Supreme Lord, he wanted to establish truce between the Kurus and the Pandavas. So at that time, even though he went there, and even though he spoke that which was appropriate, still he reinforced the conflict between them. Like that, here also, even though he enlightened, he reinforced the lack of discriminative knowledge in Yudhishthira's mind. The pious king Yudhishthira was mortified because of the mass massacre of human beings in the battle of Kurukshetra, especially on his account. Duryodhana had been there on the throne and he was doing well in his administration, and in one sense there was no need of fighting. This is Yudhishthira's thought process. But on the principle of justice, Yudhishthira was to replace him. The whole clique of politics centered around this point, and all the kings and residents of the whole world became involved in this fight between the rival cousins. Lord Krishna was also there on the side of King Yudhishthira. It is said in the Mahabharata, Adi Parva 2.25, that 640 million men were killed in the 18 days of the battle of Kurukshetra, and that millions were missing. Practically, this was the greatest battle in the world within 5,000 years. This mass killing, simply to enthrone Maharaj Yudhishthira, was too mortifying. So he tried to be convinced with evidences from histories by great sages like Vyasa and the Lord himself that the fight was just because the cause was just. But Maharaj Yudhishthira would not be satisfied, even though he was instructed by the greatest personalities of the time. Krishna is designated herein as a performer of superhuman acts. But in this particular instance, neither he nor Vyasa could convince King Yudhishthira. Does it mean that he failed to be a superhuman actor? No, certainly not. The interpretation is that the Lord as Ishvara, or the super soul in the hearts of both King Yudhishthira and Vyasa, performed still more superhuman actions. Because the Lord decided, as the super soul of King Yudhishthira, he did not allow the king to be convinced by the words of Vyasa and others, including himself, because he desired that the king hear instructions from the dying Bhishma Dev, who was another great devotee of the Lord. The Lord wanted that, at the last stage of his material existence, the great warrior Bhishma Dev see him personally and see his beloved grandchildren, King Yudhishthira, etc., now situated on the throne, and thus pass away very peacefully. Bhishma Dev was not at all satisfied to fight against the Pandavas, who were his beloved fatherless grandchildren. But the Kshatriyas are also very stern people, and therefore he was obliged to take the side of Duryodhana because he was maintained at the expense of Duryodhana. Besides this, the Lord also desired that King Yudhishthira be pacified by the words of Bhishma Dev, so that they could see that Bhishma Dev excelled all in knowledge, including the Lord himself. 47. Aharaja dharma sutas chintayan sukridam vadham prakrutenatmana viprah snehamoha vasham gataha. King Yudhishthira, son of Dharma, overwhelmed by the death of his friends, was aggrieved just like a common materialistic man. O sages, thus deluded by affection, he began to speak. Abodhameva prapanchayati aheti shadbhihi. Then in 6 verses, beginning with text 47, Suta Goswami elaborates on Yudhishthira's lack of discriminative knowledge. Prakritena aviveka vyaptena atmana chittena vipraha. So his mind was like the mind of a common man, which means at that time, which means his mind was overcome by lack of discriminating knowledge. King Yudhishthira, though he was not expected to become aggrieved like a common man, became deluded by worldly affection by the will of the Lord, just as Arjuna was apparently deluded. A man who sees knows well that the living entity is neither the body nor the mind, but is transcendental to the material conception of life. The common man thinks of violence and non-violence in terms of the body, but that is a kind of delusion. Everyone is duty-bound according to one's occupational duties. The Kshatriya is bound to fight for the right cause regardless of the opposite party. In such discharge of duty, one should not be disturbed by annihilation of the material body, which is only an external dress of the living soul. All this was perfectly known to Maharaj Yudhishthira, but by the will of the Lord, he became just like a common man, because there was another great idea behind this delusion. The king would be instructed by Bhishma as Arjuna was instructed by the Lord himself. 8. Aho me pashyata jnanam priti rudham duratmanah arakas yaiva dehasya bhakyo me kshauhini yatah. King Yudhishthira said, "O my Lord, I am the most sinful man. Just see my heart, which is full of ignorance. This body, which is ultimately meant for others, has killed many, many phalanxes of men." Parakyasya swashvigaladhyaharasya dehasya arthe. My body is meant for others means my body is meant to be eaten by dogs, jackals, and so on. Me, maya, akshauhini, akshauhinya. Though, because of me, so many akshauhinis have been destroyed. Akshauhini pramanantu vyasenoktam. The measurement of an akshauhini is stated by Vyasadeva. Akshauhini prasankhyata rathanam dvijasattamaah sankhya gana tattvajyai sahasranyekavimshatihi शतान्युपरि चैवाष्टौ तथा भूयश्च सप्ततिः गजानां च प्रसंख्यानम् एतदेव प्रकीर्तितम् ज्ञेयं शतसहस्रं तु सहस्राणि नवैवतु नराणामपि पञ्चाशत् शतानि त्रीणि चैव हि पञ्चषष्टिसहस्राणि तथाश्वानां शतानि च दशोत्तराणि षट्प्राहुः संख्या तत्त्वविदो जनाः एतामक्षौहिणीं प्राहुर्यथा यथावद् इह संख्यया इति. So this is what it comes to. There's a note here. Etam Gajeshwara, no, Gajashwarathanam Sakalyena. There's a whole figure here. I think Prabhupada has repeated it here. Yes. A solid phalanx of 21,870 chariots, 21,870 elephants, 109,350 infantry, and 65,610 cavalry is called an Akshauhini. And many Akshauhinis were killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Maharaj Yudhishthira, as the most pious king of the world, takes for himself the responsibility for killing such a huge number of living beings because the battle was fought to reinstate him on the throne. This body is, after all, meant for others. While there is life in the body, it is meant for the service of others. And when it is dead, it is meant to be eaten by dogs and jackals or maggots. This is the dharmic way of thinking. Paropakara punyaya. Piety simply means how I can benefit others. Papaya parapidanam. And sinful activities, they end up in harming others. He's sorry because for such a temporary body, such a huge massacre was committed. 49. Balad Vijas Suhrin Mitra Pitri Bhratri Guru Druha Namesyan Nirayan Moksho Hya Varsha Yutayutai. I've killed many boys, brahmanas, well-wishers, friends, parents, preceptors, and brothers. I will not be relieved from the hell that awaits me for all these sins, though I live there for millions of years. Suhridaha, Sambandhinaha, Mitrani, Takhayaha, Pitaraha, Pitruvyaha. Suhrid. Well-wishers. Well-wishers here refer to relatives. Relatives are expected to be well-wishers. Pitaraha. Parents. Parents. This refers to those who are father figures. Whenever there is war, there is certainly a massacre of many innocent living beings, such as boys, brahmanas, and women, whose killing is considered to be the greatest of sins. They are all innocent creatures, and in all circumstances, killing of them is forbidden in the scriptures. Maharaj Yudhishthira was aware of these mass killings. Similarly, there were friends, parents, and preceptors also on both sides, and all of them were killed. It was simply horrible for him to think of such killing, and therefore he was thinking of residing in hell for millions and billions of years. 50. Naino Ragyah Prajabhatur Dharma Yudhe Vathod Vishan Iti me Natu Bodhaya Kalpate Shasanam Vachaha. There is no sin for a king who kills for the right cause, who is engaged in maintaining his citizens. But this injunction is not applicable to me. Smrityadi Anushasanat Dharmayuddhe na doshaha iti chet tatraha nainaha ragyahit. An anticipated objection. The Dharma Shastras and other scriptures, they have prescribed, they have commanded, they have firmly declared that there is nothing wrong with the Dharma Yuddha, a Yuddha that is based on Dharma. In response to that, he speaks the current verse. Dusham vadaha enaha, dusham vadhe enaha, papam na bhavati iti yakshasanam shiksharupam vachaha. The instruction is that there is no sin in killing those who are envious. Tahana kalpate, but that is not applicable to me. Yataha tadvachaha prajabhartureva, because that instruction refers to a prajabhartu, who it refers to one who is engaged in the maintenance of the citizens. Ayam bhavaha. This is the idea. Swaprajanam atyantaha badhe prasakte tadvataha anugyataha. If one's prajas, if one's citizens are being tormented, restrained, and when such a situation arises, then the person who is creating that trouble can be killed. That has been permitted. Duryodhanena tu prajayam palyam anayam. But when Duryodhana is actually taking care of the citizens, maya kevalam rajalobhena hatatvat papam eva idam iti. And I have simply engaged in this mass killing just out of greed for that kingdom. Therefore, this is nothing but sin for me. Maharaj Yudhishthira thought that although he had not actually been involved in the administration of the kingdom, which was being carried on well by Duryodhana without harm to the citizens, he had caused the killing of so many living beings only for his personal gain of the kingdom from the hands of Duryodhana. The killing was committed not in the course of administration, but for the sake of self-aggrandizement. And as such, he thought himself responsible for all the sins. This again reflects his thought process. Sometimes Prabhupada in his purport just reflects the thought process of this figure. 51. Strinam madhritabandhunam dropo yo sa vihottitaha karma bher gramethi yair naham kalpo vyapohitum. I've killed many friends of women, and I have thus caused enmity to such an extent that it is not possible to undo it by material welfare work. By persons engaged in material welfare. The Grihamedi is just a pious Grihastha who is not spiritual, but he's a pious Grihastha. He's not an impious fellow. Moreover, Yuddhe Pumsam Vadaha Bhavatu Nama Dharmaha. All right, we can accept that killing of men in a war is dharma. Srinam to maya hata, but I have killed women. Bandhavaha yasam tasam, because they had relatives. Yaha asaudrohaha anuddishtaha api uthitaha tam yapohitam apakartam kalpaha samartaha naham. Now, the enmity that has arisen, I am not capable of eradicating it. Grihamethi yayat grihashrama bhitaihi. Grihamedi yaihi refers to those who engage in activities that are prescribed for the household ashrama. to give me these or those whose only business is to perform welfare work for the sake of material prosperity. So these are all pious householders, materially pious householders. Piety is also material. It is better than impiety. That is the point. Such material prosperity is sometimes hampered by sinful activities, for the materialist is sure to commit sins even unintentionally in the course of discharging material duties. To get relief from such sinful reactions, the Vedas prescribe several kinds of sacrifices. It is said in the Vedas that by performing the Ashwamedha Yajna or sacrifice, one can get relief from even Brahmahatya, killing of a Brahmana. Yudhishthir Maharaj performed this Ashwamedha Yajna, but he thinks that even by performing such yajnas, it is not possible to get relief from the great sin he committed by killing the friends and relatives of innocent women. In war, either a woman's husband or brother or even father or sons go to fight. And when they are killed, a fresh enmity is created. And thus a chain of actions and reactions increases, which is not possible to be counteracted even by thousands of Ashwamedha yajnas. The way of work, karma, is like that. It creates one action and another reaction simultaneously, and thus increases the chain of material activity, binding the performer in material bondage. In the Bhagavad Gita 9.27 to 28, the remedy is suggested that such actions and reactions of the path of work can be checked only when work is done on behalf of the Supreme Lord. The battle of Kurukshetra was actually fought by the will of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, as it is evident from his version. And only by his will was Yudhishthira placed on the throne of Hastinapur. Therefore, factually, no sin whatsoever touched the Pandavas, who were only the order carriers of the Lord. For others who declare war out of personal interest, the whole responsibility lies on them. 52. Yatha pankena pankambhaha suraya va surakritam bhutahatyam tathaivaikam nayagyair mashtumadhati. As it is not possible to filter muddy water through mud or purify a wine-stained pot with wine, it is not possible to counteract the killing of men by sacrificing animals. Nanu sarvam papmanam tarati tarati brahma hatyam yoshvamedhena yajate ya uchainam evam veda iti shrutehe papam ashvamedhena nashyedeva ityashankya अविवेक विजृंभितम हेतुवादमाश्रित्य निराकरोति यथेति. Anticipated objection. Because the Shruti says one crosses over all sins, one crosses over all sinful reactions. One crosses over the sinful reaction for the killing of a Brahmana. If he engages in Ashwamedha, the one who engages in Ashwamedha sacrifice, he crosses over all sinful reactions. He crosses over the sinful reactions for having killed even a Brahmana. So, by performing the Ashwamedha Yajna, those sinful reactions will perish. In response to that, by taking shelter of mundane logic, enriched by lack of discriminative knowledge. So he refutes that anticipated objection with the current verse. Yatha ghanapankena pankhambhaha nam mrijyate. Just as you don't use muddy water to clean something which is filled with gross mud. Yathava suralesha kritam apavityam bhafya suraya namridyate. And just as You don't take something which has been rendered unclean with a little bit of liquor by using a lot of liquor to clean it. Tathaiva bhuta hatyam ekam pramadatah jatam buddhi purva himsa prayaihi yagyaihi marshtum shodhayatum na arhati. Similarly, one cannot uh, get rid of the sinful reaction caused by killing one living creature, uh, even out of inattention, by consciously planning to engage in yajnas, which are primarily violent activities. So they are not meant to be, this is not the way to purify. Ashwamedha yajnas or Gomedha yajnas, sacrifices in which a horse or bull is sacrificed, were not, of course, for the purpose of killing the animals. Lord Chaitanya said that such animals sacrificed on the altar of yajna were rejuvenated and a new life was given to them. It was just to prove the efficacy of the hymns of the Vedas. By recitation of the hymns of the Vedas in the proper way, certainly the performer gets relief from the reactions of sins. But in case of such sacrifices improperly done under inexpert management, surely one has to become responsible for animal sacrifice. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, there is no possibility of performing the yajnas perfectly for want of expert brahmanas who are able to conduct such yajnas. Maharaj Yudhishthira, therefore, gives a hint to performing sacrifices in the age of Kali. In the Kali Yuga, the only sacrifice recommended is the performance of the Harinami Yajna, inaugurated by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But one should not indulge in animal killing and counteract it by performing the Harinami Yajna. Those who are devotees of the Lord never kill an animal for self-interest. And as the Lord ordered Arjuna, they do not refrain from performing the duty of a Kshatriya. The whole purpose, therefore, is served when everything is done for the will of the Lord. This is possible only for the devotees. Okay, some background to this. Even in the Dharma Shastras, it is pointed out that there is an arrangement for prayaschitta, atonements. But these atonements, you cannot take advantage of them knowingly. So, in other words, there are atonements for, let us say, stealing. Okay, prayaschitta. Prayaschitta simply means that you will not have to go to hell. When I perform any sinful activity, it affects me in different ways. First of all, I get a sinful reaction. That sinful reaction is something like a minus point, which is going to give me a certain type of unfavorable experience, distress in the future. It's punishment. On top of it, it also gives the desire to engage in that sinful activity. A little bit of a taste for that sinful activity is registered in the subtle body. Then on top of it, it increases the spiritual delusion in us. So sinful activities can actually cover up our endeavor to engage in jnana or yoga or bhakti. It will simply remove the desire to engage in jnana or yoga or bhakti. So very deadly. So let's say, so there's a prayaschitta for stealing. And I have found out from learned brahmanas that, if one has stolen in his youth, then when you grow old, you become a little bit repentant and more, you become frightened of going to hell and all that. So then you want to engage in some prayaschitta activity. So you find out, okay, so this is the prayaschitta for stealing. Now let us say somebody else is overhearing this conversation between me and the brahmana, who says, okay, so you have stolen. This is the prayaschitta for stealing. You have to do these austerities for 12 years, 24 years. Prayashittas are always like that. 12 years, 24 years, 36 years. And very severe restriction of eating, very severe restriction. It's proper, it's what the Hindus call vrat. Complicated. Austerity. So let's say that person overhears, okay, so for this kind of stealing, this kind of prayaschitta is there. I am a young man, so let me go and steal, and then later on I will do the prayaschitta. So now in the Dharma Shastras, it is pointed out, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says that, it is pointed out that this will not work. Prayaschitta is meant to be done with the spirit of repentance, not with the pre-planning. So one cannot, that attitude is very, very important. What is the attitude with which you engage in activities of atonement? That is very important. So that is what Yudhishthira is bringing up here. Prabhupada also says that one cannot engage in animal killing and counteract it by performing the Harinam Yajna. Chapter 9, 1. Tutuvacha. Iti bhita prajadroha sarvadharma vivitsaya tato vi nashanam praga yatra deva tato patat. Suta Goswami said, being afraid because of having killed so many subjects on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Maharaj Yudhishthir went to the scene of the massacre. There, Bhishmadev was lying on a bed of arrows, about to pass away. Yudhishthiraya Bhishmena Sarvadharma Nirupanam Krishna Stutischa Muktischa Navame Tasya Varanyate. In the 9th chapter, Bhishma's description of all forms of dharma to Yudhishthira, his prayers to Lord Krishna and his deliverance are described. Yadartham tasya avivekaha Shri Krishnena samvartitaha tad darshayati iti. The purpose for which Sri Krishna had increased Yudhishthir's lack of discrimination is now pointed out here. Sarvesham dharmanam vivatsaya veditum ikshaya. Yudhishthir Maharaj was filled with a desire to understand all the different acts of religion. Vinashanam, Kurukshetram, Devavrataha, Bhishmaha. In this 9th chapter, as it is willed by Lord Sri Krishna, Bhishmadev will impart instructions to King Yudhishthira on the subject of occupational duties. Bhishmadev will also offer his last prayer to the Lord on the verge of passing away from this mortal world and thus become liberated from the bondage of further material engagements. Bhishmadev was endowed with the power of leaving his material body at will, and his lying down on the bed of arrows was his own choice. This passing away of the great warrior attracted the attention of all the contemporary elites, and all of them assembled there to show their feelings of love, respect, and affection for the great soul. 2. Tada te bhrataras sarve saddashvaish swarnabhushitaih anvagachan rathair pravyasadhaumyadayastatha. At that time, all his brothers followed him on beautiful chariots drawn by first-class horses decorated with gold ornaments. With them were Vyasa and rishis like Dhaumya, the learned priest of the Pandavas, and others. For a description of Dhaumya, see the purport to text 6 and 7 of this chapter. 3. Bhagavan api prashe rathena sad dhananjaya satair vyarrochatan nrapah kuvera iva guhyakaih. O sage amongst the Brahmanas, Shaunaka. Lord Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, also followed, seated on a chariot with Arjuna. Thus King Yudhishthira appeared very aristocratic, like Kuvera, surrounded by his companions, the Guhyaka. Lord Shri Krishna wanted the Pandavas to be present before Bhishma Dev in the most aristocratic order, so that he might be pleased to see them happy at the time of his death. So whereas the richest of all the demigods, and that herein it is said, King Yudhishthira appeared like him, indicates that the procession along with Sri Krishna was quite appropriate to the royalty of King Yudhishthira. 4. Drishtwani patitam bhumam divaschutam ivamaram pranayemu pandava bhishmam sanuga sahachakrina. Seeing him, Bhishma, lying on the ground like a demigod fallen from the sky, Pandava, the Pandava king Yudhishthira, along with his younger brothers and Lord Krishna, bowed down before him. Sanuga, Parivara Saitaha. So Yudhishthira was accompanied by his family members. Lord Krishna was also a younger cousin of Maharaj Yudhishthira, as well as the intimate friend of Arjuna. But all of the family members of the Pandavas knew Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord, although conscious of his supreme position, always behaved according to human customs. So he also bowed down before the dying Bhishma Dev, as if he were one of the younger brothers of King Yudhishthira. 5. Tatra brahmarshiyas sarve devashiyascha sattama rajarshiyascha tatrasan drashtum bharatapungava. Just to see the chief of the descendants of King Bharata Bhishma, all the great souls in the universe, namely the rishis amongst the demigods, brahmanas and kings, all situated in the qualities, were assembled there. Tatra, tata, at that time, tatra asan, kshanameva agata ityartha. At that very moment, all of these great souls, they arrived. Bharatapungavam Bhishma. The rishis are those who have attained perfection by spiritual achievements. Such spiritual achievements can be earned by all, whether one is a king or a mendicant. Bhishma Dev himself was also one of the Brahmarshis and the chief of the descendants of King Bharata. All rishis are situated in the quality of goodness. All of them are assembled there on hearing the news of the great warrior's impending death. 6 to 7. Parvato Narado Dhaumyo Bhagavan Badarayana Bhradashvo Bharadwajas Sashishyo Renukasutaha Vasishtha Indra Pramadas Tritogritsam Madositaha Akshivan Gautamotrischa Kaushikotha Sudarshanaha. All the sages like Parvata Muni, Narada, Dhaumya, Vyasa, the incarnation of God, Bhradashva, Bharadwaja, Parshuram with disciples, Vasishtha, Indra Pramada, Trita, Gritsamada, Asita, Kakshivan, Gautama, Atri, Kaushika, and Sudarshana were present. Renukasutaha Parshuram. Renukasuta, the son of Renuka is Parshuram. Parvata Muni is considered to be one of the oldest sages. He is almost always a constant companion of Narada Muni. They are also spacemen competent to travel in the air without the help of any material vehicle. Parvata Muni is also a Devarshi or a great sage amongst the demigods like Narada. He was present along with Narada at the sacrificial ceremony of Maharaj Janamejaya, son of Maharaj Parikshit. In this sacrifice, all the snakes of the world were to be killed. So this is all Mahabharata discussion. Janamejaya was so angry with Takshaka that he wanted to kill all the snakes of the world. So he conducted a sacrifice. It was stopped. Parvata Muni and Narada Muni are called Gandharvas also because they can travel in the air singing the glories of the Lord. Since they can travel in the air, they observed Draupadi's Swayamvara ceremony, selecting of her own husband from the air. Like Narada Muni, Parvata Muni also used to visit the royal assembly in the heaven of King Indra. As a Gandharva, sometimes he visited the royal assembly of Kuber, one of the important demigods. Both Narada and Parvata were once in trouble with the daughter of Maharaj Srinjaya. Maharaj Srinjaya got the benediction of a son by Parvata Muni. Narada Muni is inevitably associated with the narrations of the Puranas. He is described in the Bhagavatam. In his previous life, he was a son of a maid servant. But by good association with pure devotees, he became enlightened in devotional service. And in the next life, he became a perfect man, comparable with himself only. It is only the ignorant population who think Narada Muni is an unintelligent clown. Amongst the Vedantists, amongst those who intellectually analyze the teachings of the scriptures, Narada is a very, very realized teacher of Vedanta philosophy. Comes in the Upanishad directly. In the Mahabharata, his name is mentioned in many places. He is the principal Devarshi, or the chief sage amongst the demigods. He is the son and disciple of Brahmaji, and from him the disciplic succession in the line of Brahma has been spread. He initiated Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, and many other celebrated devotees of the Lord. He initiated even Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedic literatures, and from Vyasadeva, Madhvacharya was initiated, and thus the Madhva Sampradaya, in which the Gaudiya Sampradaya is also included, as spread all over the universe. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu belonged to this Madhva Sampradaya. Therefore, Brahmaji, Narada, Vyasa, down to Madhva, Chaitanya, and the Goswamis, all belonged to the same line of disciplic succession. Narada ji has instructed many kings from time immemorial. In the Bhagavatam, we can see that he instructed Prahlad Maharaj while he was on the womb of his mother. He instructed Vasudeva, father of Krishna. He instructed Prahlad Maharaj, 7th canto. He instructed Vasudeva, father of Krishna, 11th canto, as well as Maharaj Yudhishthira, 1st canto. He instructs Dhruva Maharaj in 4th canto. He instructs Yudhishthira Maharaj in 7th canto also, while describing Dharma. Dhaumya, a great sage who practiced severe penances at Utkochakatirtha and was appointed royal priest of the Pandava kings. He acted as the priest in many religious functions of the Pandavas, samskaras. And also each of the Pandavas was attended by him at the betrothal of Draupadi. He was present even during the exile of the Pandavas and used to advise them in circumstances when they were perplexed. He instructed them how to live incognito for 1 year, and his instructions were strictly followed by the Pandavas during that time. His name is mentioned also when the general funeral ceremony was performed after the Battle of Kurukshetra in the Anushasana Parva. Spelling mistake, that should be an accent above the first S, not a dot below it. Of Mahabharata, 127.15 to 16, he gave religious instructions very elaborately to Maharaj Yudhishthira. He was actually the right type of priest for a householder, since he could guide the Pandavas on the right path of religion. A priest is meant for guiding the householder progressively on the right path of ashrama dharma, or the occupational duty of a particular caste. There's practically no difference between the family priest and the spiritual master. The sages, saints, and brahmanas were especially meant for such functions. Badarayana, Vyasadeva, he is known as Krishna Dvaipayana, Satyavati Sutta, Parasharatmaja, Badarayana, Vedavyasa, etc. He's called Krishna because he's dark skinned. Krishna Dvaipayana because he was dark skinned and he was born in an island. Dvaipayana because he was born in an island. Satyavati Sutta, he was born as a son of Satyavati Devi. Parasharya, he was a son of Parashara. Parashara Atmaja, same. Badarayana. It's one of his names. Vedavyasa, he was the editor of the Vedas, etc. Question here. Achyutanam Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, I missed this Dvayapayana. What the translation
Dvaipayana
means?
means one who is born in an island.
And why it's Krishna Dvayapayana?
He is dark skinned. He is dark blue in complexion.
And Prabhu, in Dham Rishi's description, it is written each of the Pandavas was attended by him at the betrothal of Draupadi. What does this mean?
Before, it's one ceremony which is done before wedding.
Oh,
Prabhupada was referring to that.
okay.
He was the son of Mahamuni Parashara from the womb of Satyavati prior to her betrothal with Maharaj Shantanu, the father of the great general grandfather Bhishmadev. He is a powerful incarnation of Narayana. This is a general statement. Vedavyasa is always empowered by Lord Narayana. As a post, it's a post. Vyasa is a post. And he broadcasts the Vedic wisdom to the world. As such, Vyasadeva is offered respects before one chants the Vedic literature, especially the Puranas. Sukadeva Goswami was his son, and rishis like Vaishampayana were his disciples for different branches of the Vedas. He is the author of the great epic Mahabharata and the great transcendental literature of Bhagavatam. The Brahma Sutras, the Vedanta Sutras, or Badarayana Sutras were compiled by him. Among sages, he is the most respected author by dint of severe penances. When he wanted to record the great epic Mahabharata for the welfare of all people in the age of Kali, he was feeling the necessity of a powerful writer who could take up his dictation. By the order of Brahmaji, Sri Ganeshji took up the charge of noting down the dictation on the condition that Vyasadeva would not stop dictation for a moment. The Mahabharata was thus compiled by the joint endeavor of Vyasa and Ganesha. By the order of his mother, Satyavati, who was later married to Maharaj Shantanu, and by the request of Bhishmadev, the eldest son of Maharaj Shantanu, by his first wife, the Ganges, he begot three brilliant sons, whose names are Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura. The Mahabharata was compiled by Vyasadeva after the battle of Kurukshetra and after the death of all the heroes of the Mahabharata. It was first spoken in the royal assembly of Maharaj Janamejaya, the son of Maharaj Parikshit. It is said that the current Vedavyasa is Lord Vishnu himself. Sometimes the Lord himself occupies a particular empowered post. For instance, the position of Indra is slightly empowered. That's only a Vibhuti. That is not a Shaktya-Veshavata. But still, he's slightly empowered. But sometimes Lord Vishnu himself becomes Indra. So like that, the Vedavyasa post is a Shaktya-Vesha post. But it is said that the current Vedavyasa is the Lord himself. But nevertheless, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur generally refers to him in terms of his post. In the Tattavadi line, they refer to Vyasadeva as the Supreme Lord himself, always, always. They're only talking of the current Vedavyasa. They're not talking about the post of Vedavyasa in general. They also know that is a post. Brihadashva, an ancient sage who used to meet Maharaj Yudhishthir now and then. First of all, he met Maharaj Yudhishthir at Kamyavan. This sage narrated the history of Maharaj Nala. There is another Brihadashva who is the son of the Ikshvaku dynasty. Mahabharata, Vanaparva 209.45. Bharadwaj, he is one of the 7 great rishis and was present at the time of the birth ceremony of Arjuna. The powerful rishi sometimes undertook severe penances on the shore of the Ganges, and his ashrama is still celebrated at Prayagdham. It is learned that this rishi, while taking bath in the Ganges, happened to meet Ghritachi, one of the beautiful society girls of heaven, and thus he discharged semen. It was kept and preserved in an earthen pot, and from which Drona was born. So Dronacharya is a son of Bharadwaja Muni. Others say that Bharadwaja, the father of Drona, is a different person from Maharshi Bharadwaja. He was a great devotee of Brahma. Once he approached Dronacharya and requested him to stop the battle of Kshetra. So I'll stop with that because the next session is supposed to begin with the portion beginning with Parshuram or Renukasutta. So I'll go to examine what the Acharyas have spoken from 46 onwards. Yes.
Prabhu, like it's mentioned, semen was stored in earthen pot, and then in Mahabharata also we see that Gandhari, like Gandhari ji, she delivered lump of flesh, and then again it was somehow treated. I mean, I don't know the technology, but so if modern Kali Yuga guy asks that how was this possible?
You should read Searching for Vedic India.
Okay.
Searching for Vedic India.
Okay.
It's
By
available.
Deva Maharaj.
Yeah, it's in Kindle.
Okay. Okay, Maharaj.
Get hold
Okay.
of it. Read it.
Thank you, bro.
Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur notes that Krishna was thinking, if I'm simply in this place with the Pandavas, in the meanwhile, Bhishma is there on the bed of arrows. He does not wish to die without seeing me. So I will show him myself along with my associates because he's my devotee. I'll make him happy. And I will spread his exalted glory on this planet. And through his mouth, I will enlighten the king also. Wow. Yudhishthir Maharaj, considering himself to be an ordinary man and being overcome by the emotions of a common man, was by the will of Bhagavan in order to fulfill the purposes of Bhagavan. Baladev Vidyabhushana Prabhu says in his commentary to text 50, Prajapidakan Vishaha Prajapalanaaya Dharmayuddhe Nihnataha Ragyaha Papam Nasyat. When a king kills his opponents who are tormenting the citizens, and this king is killing his opponents in order to protect those citizens, then he will not attain any sin. So there had to be a reason in the past for a war. I think in today's world also, when they declare a war, when a country declares a war, they try their best to prove that there is some ethical principle involved. Either a war on terrorism or it is to gather weapons of mass destruction which are stored in that country. It is going to destroy that country and everybody else. Something like some excuse people still try to give. Baladev Vidyabhushan says, the Shruti says that Ashwamedha is going to remove all sinful reactions, including the sinful reaction of killing of Brahmana. And so Yudhishthira should not be lamenting. He should not be regretting. It's not appropriate for him to do that. But Yudhishthira's thought process is, even an Ashwamedha Yagya is mixed with a lot of violence. And therefore, that leads to further sinful activities, sinful reactions, and so on. So it is not going to destroy the other sinful reactions. धीपूर्वक हिंसा प्रचुरैः अनेकैः यज्ञैः एकां भूतहत्यां प्रमादादपि जातां माष्टुं जनः नार्हति. His logic is, with knowledge, I am going to engage in several sacrifices. Those sacrifices are all abundantly filled with violence. So how can even many such sacrifices cleanse a person from the sinful reaction for killing even one creature, even out of inattention? Hetuvada vijrambhitoyam avivekaha. This is actually just ordinary, mundane logic. This is not scriptural logic. There is no scriptural basis to it. This is actually wrong. Why it is wrong is because if one properly follows the Vedic scriptural injunctions, then one will actually be purified. If one does everything correctly, if one carries out the activity correctly and has the attitude correct, then actually he'll be purified. This is a false logic of Yudhishthira. He's just bewildered by Krishna, therefore he spoke this false thing. Krishna Chakravarti Thakur. नवमे स्वप्रभुं भीष्मो तदशाथ तदाज्ञया धर्मानुत्वा बहुस्तुत्वा तमेव प्राप भक्तितः. In the 9th chapter, we come across Bhishma, who sees his master, and on the order of his master, he speaks about dharma. He glorifies his master, and then in devotion he attains his master. यद्यपि तव अविवेकः न अपयाति तदा सर्वधर्म तत्त्वज्ञं भीष्ममपि पृच्छ इति उक्तिर्यदा सर्वसम्मताभूत् तदा राजा तत्रैव ययौ. So even though your lack of knowledge does not go away, even though your confusion doesn't go away, at least you should go to Bhishma, who knows the truth about all the different dharmas. So when this counsel was offered to him, it was approved by everyone. Then the king went to this place. These are all brought out in great detail in Mahabharata. Even though I have instructed you along with Vyasadeva and others, and still you are not you haven't attained discriminating knowledge. Then at least you should ask Bhishma, who is very interested in your benefit. He knows the nature of all the different dharmas. So when the king was told this, then he went near Bhishma. This will see later. Okay, I'll stop with this. Okay, yes. So, we hear Ganesh ji only wrote the Mahabharata and all the Vedas and Puranas. How did it happen? What does this mean? Ganesh is only a transcriber, that's all. This is Vyasadev's work. Ganesh was only transcribing it. All the Vedas are first of all not Smriti, they are not written down like this. The Vedas is eternal audio. Eternal audio. You only keep hearing it. You download it and you hear it. That's all. The one who downloads it for the first time and in a particular day of Brahma and so on is known as the Rishi, the one who sees it, the one who detects the presence of that audio, eternal audio. That is the Shruti. The Puranas, each Purana has its own history. Like Bhagavatam has its history. Like Vishnu Purana has its own history. Vishnu Purana is spoken by Parashara to Maitreya Rishi. Like that, each Purana has its own history. Okay? Right? Anshaya Kalpataru Vyashya Kripasan Vikhneva Cha Paritanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha.